So we're looking at learning outcome 3 for health and safety, and today's learning outcome is be able to carry out a risk assessment, and there's 3 criteria again for this. So 3.1 is describe the range of risk assessments used in health and social care settings. 3.2 is carry out a risk assessment, and 3.3 is implement the recommendations of a risk assessment. So let's make our way to PowerPoint. And next step. So when we talk about risk assessments, it's quite important to know what a risk assessment is. Now, a risk assessment is just like a systematic process. It's where you're evaluating any potential risks. So something that could happen. So if there's a loose towel, somebody could trip over it and maybe hurt themselves, bang their face into a desk, or break an arm. If there's a leaky tap, maybe the sink will overflow and it might get blocked, it might overflow. If somebody could trip over the water or slip. So, you know, little things like this, if the light bulbs are flickering, it could cause somebody to have an epileptic reaction. So you're just evaluating what potentially could happen. So when you're doing risk assessments, you need to take a thorough look at your workplace. So try and identify those things, those situations, any type of processes that are in place. So if you've got a process where you're, say, doing a particular task every day and it involves heavy lifting, what is the risk of that? So look at all of those things and try and find out, is there anything that might potentially cause harm, especially to people? And then you've got to evaluate how likely that risk is and how severe the risk is, and then go ahead and sort out the measures in effect from that. So you can either prevent the risks or control them or put warnings in place. So it really got to depend on what the severity is. So we've got the management of health and safety at work. So we've looked at this before. So that regulations require risks to be assessed in all areas of work. So it doesn't even matter if you're working in healthcare or in a shop or in a little sort of like a truck where that serves food, any of those things. Anywhere that people work, you have to be risk assessed. So under the management of the Health and Safety at Work Regulation 99, risk in the workplace must be assessed, and once the risk is identified, measures need to be put in place to reduce that risk. So you figured out, you've seen, here's a problem, that's a risk, somebody could burn their hand, somebody could get cut, those knives out on a magnetic bar, they could slip off, it's not working properly, this is the risk it could cause, now we have to reduce that risk. And then the last part of this is just the requirement for risk assessment. So it's a legal requirement for every employer and self-employed person to make risk assessments. So anything with health and safety risks. So the purpose of the assessment is just to identify what is the problem and what needs to be done to control health and safety. So are you okay with that section, Lee, about what risk assessment actually is?
Yeah, risk assessments, obviously the risks, and as an employer, not just as an employer, but as an employer as well, because I believe that you have to work as a team. It can't just be one person that's going about doing everything. It has to be the team within the workplace that identifies the risks, and if there is any risks, you know, keep it under control and make sure everything's done in the correct manner, that, you know, nobody can sue or whatever it is that people do nowadays just to try and get money.
Exactly, no, you're true. So 3.1 is describe the range of risk assessments used in health and social care settings. So in different health and social care sectors, different sectors actually pride themselves on the welfare of their staff, on their patients, on the family members that come in. So anybody that's involved within health and social care, they do want to make sure that everybody is looked after. So they do have a good processes in place to try and make sure that health and safety is involved at all times. So obviously some centres are better than the others, but a risk assessment is carried out. So just to make sure that you've got the secure equality of treatment for all employees as well. So it's not just about somebody, getting hurt or anything. It's about making sure that all the tasks are shared out fairly as well. So, because when we look at social services, we look at quite a diverse area of where they work. So they're not just in one environment. They can be in a whole lot of different environments, from home visits to centres, to schools, to police stations. So they can be in a lot of different, what do we call it? Locations. There you go, that's the word. So risks can actually occur in a social or physical or mental health. So these can occur in different age ranges as well, so from child to adult. Let's go up. There you go. So under the Health and Social Care Act 2008, we call it the HSC. So Health and Safety at Work Act, also 1974. All employees have a legal duty to carry out a risk assessment. So it doesn't matter where they work, what they're doing, they have to do one. And then organizations have to carry out an evaluation for all their employees. So just to see who's going to be affected by what. And then when we're looking at risk assessments, we want to know what a risk assessment in care is. So a risk assessment in health and social care is just there to actually help you to spot any potential areas that might be dangerous in your workplace, or if there's any issues that could arise and how you can put reasonable measures in place to prevent them. And now I remember a few years ago, I was doing gardening and I cut my hand really bad. And my brother took me to A&E. While I was there, I remember there was another patient that had come in and he'd cut his head really badly, but I don't know exactly what the issues were with him, but he was being quite violent and quite aggressive towards the nursing staff there. So when you're having, regardless of where you are, especially within healthcare, you do meet a lot of people from different walks of life, different moods, who might be feeling vulnerable, afraid, or they might be feeling aggressive. So a lot of staff have to put up with a lot of different behaviours. So it's good to have certain measures in place so that, if there is a patient that is being aggressive, what do we do? How do we locate it? How do we get in touch with someone? Does somebody else come into the room with us? What do we do? And it's good, reasonable measure to have something in place so you know what you can fall back on. Now, it's also used for social care protection, so against any potential harassment or discrimination from any individuals that they're caring for. And in addition to this, they've got the right to be cared for, and the right to have this little quotation, which I'm going to read to you, is care and support that is safe and takes their needs, freedom and dignity into account. And then we look at the UK's main regulatory body for all of the health and social care needs that are part of health and safety. So we know that it's responsible for working with local authorities, and they regulate all the activities that employers do. And if it's necessary, they'll take legal action. So if there's an employer who's not meeting health and safety needs, is constantly disregarding them, they will take action. We talked about what those actions were yesterday. Like they could get fined, they could get closed down, they could get prohibition notices and imprisonment notices as well. They could also get a jail sentence. And then we've got a part of some main risks for workers here. So somebody who might work as a healthcare assistant might have these type of issues come upon them. So they might get violent, aggressive or discriminatory behaviour. They might get diseases like Legionella. Now, Legionella is just a disease that happens in your lung and it causes breathing issues. They might fall over or slip, so just general little hurts that happen while you're working. They might have to manually handle a patient or items if they're going out to do shopping for someone, or if they're moving somebody who's wheelchair bound from one area to the other, where they're trying to physically move them into a bed or onto a chair. That could be an issue. And then it could also cause any mental health problems as well. And then we've got the different range of risk assessment. So when we're looking at risks, there's quite a lot of ranges of risk assessments that happen within healthcare. So I've got the next few of those are on the next few slides. So you've got balancing risk and independence. So risk, it can actually be beneficial. So risk isn't always bad. And sometimes you do need to take risk, but with a good level of protection. So for example, if there's a patient who has dementia and you're trying to give them a bit more control in their life, but you're not trying to completely take over. So you've got to balance those risks. So if a patient that's got dementia likes to go for walks, what can you do? So within that, maybe you can set a reasonable limit and say these grounds are a safe place for this patient to take walks there. If anything happens, we can deal with it. If they get violent or aggressive, we're able to have staff members that are within the vicinity that they can come and help. So it doesn't mean just shackle them up and put them in a room and say, no, you can't go anywhere. So you've got to have a good amount of risk sometimes as well. Then you've got choice and risk. So choice and control. So we all want a choice. We all want control. So we want to say in how our lives go and what we do. Sometimes this is good for us. Sometimes it's bad for us. But it can be risky for us as well, depending on if we don't have enough knowledge about certain things and we're quite adamant about doing certain things in a certain way. So within that, you've got to try and balance those risks again. So give somebody their choice, give them their control, but try and do it within a reasonable limit. And you can have difficulties in balancing empowerment with the duty of care. So the rights of adults to live independent lives, so everybody has a right to live an independent life and to take risks that they choose, but these need to be weighed carefully against any issues about significant harm. So if somebody has Alzheimer's, where they forget who their family members are, Alzheimer's is that issue where a lot of the people don't remember their family members, they don't know who they are, or they get stuck in like a time backwards where the children were young and actually believe that they're at that age then. If they let themselves out of the house and they go wandering down, they might not be able to come back home, they might not know where they live or what they're doing. So it can be quite scary, it can be quite worrying for the family members. So there is issues in what can you let a person do and what should you try and stop them to doing. But then you've got to check, will they get significantly harmed? Will there be really big issues? What can we do to balance this? Then you've got support requirements to minimize risk. So making good risk assessments and supporting residents to take risks if they wish to. So include what they want to do within your care planning and ask them what their choices are, what they like to do, what their hobbies are, especially if they're in long-term care, and try and incorporate that within the actual care plan. So they're happy, you're happy. And then you have impact on risk of others. So any activities you do will have some sort of risk, but these type of activities will need to be prioritized. So some will have minimal risks where you might let them out, say, okay, let's go to the park. Let's go and have a bit of fun. It's a lovely hot day. So you might have minimal risks where you know that somebody, if they're walking around, they might trip over, they might scrape their knee. That's a minimal risk. But will there be a severe impact? Is there a chance of one of your service users, say, running off or going away unattended and putting themselves in danger? So only a couple more slides on this. Then you've got positive risk taking. So when you do positive risk taking, like I said, not all risks are bad. Some risks are good. So they do have a potential of having a benefit on you and also having a harm on you. So what you want to do is you want to try and support people to take positive risks to help them achieve personal growth and change. But then it doesn't mean you're actually trying to eliminate everything out of that. It just means you're managing the risks. So if you know that somebody might have a chance of getting a little bit upset if they've not achieved what they wanted to do, it is a good learning curve. It's a good way to teach someone that, yes, there are things in life that you might have to go through disappointment with, and so on. And then you've got the human rights. So certain sectors and products carry a greater risk of adverse human rights. So the impact of these, they need to be balanced. So if you think about the psych ward, with there, a lot of the patients have to be restrained some of the time, depending on, especially when they first, really depending on the severity of what the situation is. Some people will have to be restrained. And now, it's infringing on human rights, but then you've got to think about what the potential risk could be over here. Is there if you let that person go unrestrained, if they go out, if they harm themselves or harm others, what outweighs the other? So you've got to try and balance those risks. So overall, people just want control over their lives. They want to be able to make choices about what services they're getting, what medication they're taking, what they want to do on a daily basis, how they want to dress, what they want to eat. So a lot of people don't get those choices, but a lot of people will get those choices on a natural basis, and they take it for granted. So giving people more choice and control is not always as simple as it seems. So everyday life involves us, making decisions and choices. So it's about our health, our social care, what school we go to, what you do. So some choices will involve us taking risks, and that can be a positive thing. But then others, it can also be an issue where it might pose a question over somebody's safety or the safety of others. So sometimes things will go right and sometimes things will go wrong, but taking a risk isn't always bad. So after all that really long section there, what do you think, Lee? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. I was listening.
Yeah.
My mind just wanders off sometimes. I listen, but my mind just wanders off.
Oh, no, I know, yeah.
And but I think that, people are different. We're all made and built different. So when it comes to like risk assessments and stuff like that, it's, you don't know what that person's experienced in their life. You see, our brains can only comprehend what we experience in life.
Mm-hmm.
What we see in life, our brains are limited to what we actually know based on our experience and what we've been told. Because sometimes people can say, well, I went here and this, and then you can get some kind of perception of what something's going to be like in your head, but you won't actually know until you've done it. And I think that's what's wrong with like the world today. But when it comes to health and social care, people are different. So what might work with somebody else might work for somebody else. That's just how it is. Because you don't know what that person, you could shout at somebody because you can take it, but you're doing it in a constructive criticism, you're doing it in a positive, constructive way because you care for that person, or, you don't want any harm to come to that person, or whatever it is, but someone else, they might take offense to that, so you have to be more careful. So when it comes to risks and stuff like that, you just have to, it depends on who the person is. You have to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful in how you conduct yourself, but in a professional way, always sticking to the rules and the laws and the legislations and the codes and everything else. But I also believe that in life we have to take risks as well. I'm not in about a work setting now, but I'll give you an example. I went with the manager from here, and we went for a long walk not long ago, and there was this big, massive rock, and I felt the urge to climb it. Now, I'm no good with heights. I'm not very good with heights, but I climbed it anyway, and I got to the top, and I thought, yeah, that was a risk worth taking. But as soon as I got to the top, I think, flipping heck, how am I going to get down? And it seemed like a bad idea at that point, because I thought they might have to get a helicopter or something to try and get me down. But I managed to get down, but then when I got down, I was thinking, yes, that was a risk worth taking. So I understand what you mean with, like, positive risks and negative risks. It's but life's all about taking risks. I
It is,
think.
it's true. I bet you felt really good after that for days, though. You thought, I've conquered.
Yeah, it's amazing. I got to the top though, I thought, flipping heck, how am I going to get down here now? But I'm very calm in like situations like that. So in proper, you know, I could be on an aeroplane or on a boat. I'll say a boat. I could be on a boat and it's starting to sink and it's in the middle of the ocean or something. And I'd be the calmest person on the boat. You know what I mean? I'd probably just sit there and start singing or something, or I'd try and make, you know, people feel comfortable. But then in the little situations where someone's looking at me the wrong way, I'll be like, what are you looking at? you know what I mean? So it's yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. We'll go on to 3.2 again. Unfortunately, this one is a bit long as well. Hopefully, it's not too bad. So we talked about what a risk assessment is and why we do them, and now we're going to talk about how to carry a risk assessment out. Now, there are actually 5 steps to carry a risk assessment out in the traditional way. So we've got the Health and Safety Executive, so HSC for short, and they actually they advise employers to follow these 5 steps. So the first is identify the hazards. Second is to decide who might be harmed and how. Third is to evaluate the risks and decide on what control measures you're going to have. Fourth is record your significant findings, so make a record. And then fifth is to review your assessment and to update anything if necessary. So we'll go through each step. So step 1, identify hazards, so anything that might cause a harm. So any employee has a duty to assess the health and safety risks that them workers might have, and they need to systematically check for any possible physical, mental, chemical, and biological hazards. So then a common one for this is things like physical, so lifting, any postures, if somebody's used to, you know, sort of like, you know, slouching when they're sitting down, maybe get them a chair that keeps them up straight, you know, slipping and tripping, noise. So mental risks, so any excess workload when you're getting too much given to you, very long hours, working with clients that have very high needs on a consistent basis. So if you had a client basically and you have to see 4, 5 clients in a day, you got to go up. But if every single one of them is very high needs, then you've got to, you know, work non-stop with each of them. You've not got a break in between, or you've not got a simple person in between where you can just say, oh, okay, this client just wants me to go out and have a chat with them and have a cup of tea with them, and they're happy with that. They don't need me to do anything physically or lift them or go shopping for them. It's having 5, 6 people in one day that have all got high needs will be quite stressing for you. Then you've got chemicals. So if there's some of your employees that are working with cleaning fluids or any particular fluids, so like asbestos, aerosols, that might be an issue. And then biological, so somebody that could contract hepatitis or tuberculosis or any infectious diseases. Number 2 is decide who may be harmed and how. So identifying who's at risk. So full-time employees, part-time employees, it doesn't matter what time they work. You've got to identify, make sure your employees are fine. So you've got to look at all the risks that they might face and work from there. So employees need to review all the routines and the different locations and situations that their staff are employed in. Like I said, not every person that works in care or health and social care will actually stay in one centre or stay in one office. Sometimes there'll be home visits or school visits and so on. So home care supervisors must take account of their client's personal safety in their home and ensure that they've got safe working methods and that they're actually able to lift their service users if necessary in a safe way. And then employers also have special duties towards the health and safety of young workers, disabled employees, night workers, shift workers, and pregnant or breastfeeding women. Now, I remember I was working in a primary school when I was pregnant with my youngest child. He's 6.5 now. when I was there, I used to work within year one, and those were children that were aged 5 and 6. And at that time, when we were out in the playgrounds, I'd be with them almost everywhere, in the playgrounds, in the classroom. But there'd be a lot of high speed running around and banging into me. So when I got I only didn't stop working till about 3 weeks before I was due to give birth. So I took maternity leave quite late. And when we were working, the kids would go zooming past, banging into me because they were all excited. They loved, getting attention. They wanted to play. So my workplace at that time realised, okay, it's not the best environment for Aisha to be in. She needs to go elsewhere. So they put me into the library instead. And we were setting up a new library. So at that time, the last 5-6 weeks, all I did was categorise books and put everything away or work in the office. So in that time, there are some special conditions that have to be put in place for your employees if there's an issue that might affect their safety. So step 3 is assess the risks and take action. So this just means that employers need to consider how likely it is that each hazard, so any hazard could cause harm. So it will also determine whether or not your employer should reduce the level of risk. So again, if there's loose tiles or frayed carpeting, if that's going to cause people tripping over, what should they do? So should cover it initially and then get someone to come out and repair it. So even after all precautions have been taken, some risks sometimes remain. And then employers need to decide on each of the remaining hazards that I've left. Is it a high, medium, or low risk? What type of risk is it? Then step 4, so make a record of the findings. So any employees that have 5 or more staff, they need to make a record in writing about the main findings of a risk assessment. So they carried out a risk assessment, now they need to write down exactly what the results were. So this record needs to put down any hazards and any action that needs to be taken to reduce or eliminate the risk. And then the record, again, it provides proof, like we talked about auditing and so on yesterday, but it provides proof that the assessment has been carried out. And again, it can be used to review working practices at a later date. So again, this record should be made available. So it shouldn't be locked away in a cupboard and put away forever to gather dust. It should be made available so that you can actually have access to it and that you can refer back to it. And then the last little section on here is step 5, review the risk assessment. So a risk assessment has to be reviewed. So we do this so that you can ensure that you've got safe working practices and that these practices are continuing to be applied and that any of the management safety instructions are respected by supervisors and line managers, and also they'll take into account any new working practices. So if you make a review of all the risks that you've already identified and there's a new working practice that has come about that you started doing anyway, you can incorporate that into it. So again, you've got identify, analyze, plan, track, and document. In total, just communicate all the risks that are there. So are you okay with this section, Lee?
Yeah, it's just common sense, isn't it? Carry out a risk assessment is if you don't carry out risk assessments, then accidents are going to happen. If you don't carry out risk assessments, then things could happen. So you need to carry out risk assessments to prevent accidents from happening. I mean, just as a leader as well, you want what's best for your staff also. So me personally, I would break my back for my staff. So if I was to go, I've done it in here loads of times. I stick up for people in here. I've got involved in stuff that there's not even my stuff to get involved in, but I can see the other person's cowering or whatever it is, and I'll stand up for that person. I've always been like that. So we're all different, aren't we?
No, it's true. It's a good thing to do as well. Yeah. Especially if you see that somebody needs somebody to advocate for them and then you know that you can. Or especially if you know that it'll de-escalate the situation. So if you know that if you don't step in and it's going to get higher and higher and it might cause a fight, if you step in and the other person will just calm down and leave that other lad alone, then you know that it's the best thing to do, isn't it? Sometimes just to speak up and say, oh, you leave him alone, or go mind your own business, or anything like that. So it does help.
It's like you won't get a pregnant woman, would you, in a workplace and say, there's loads of boxes over there, go and lift them boxes. It just wouldn't happen. And
Exactly.
Between me and you, if I ever saw that happen, I'd probably slap the guy who said it, because it's just wrong. No. So yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot more other people that were there to go and do that particular job, but you just end up doing it yourself if there's no one else to do it. But yeah.
Lead by example, that's what it's about, isn't it?
Exactly. Now this one you'll be happy to know is just this section here, so just one slide. So 3.3 is implement the recommendations of a risk assessment. Now this one is quite simple. So you've carried out a risk assessment and you figured out what the issues were. There's loose carpeting, there's a tile that is loose in the ceiling. I remember when I used to do risk assessments for the playground that my year used to be in. We'd go take it in turns. We do a risk assessment every morning because our playground, it actually faced the main street, so people could walk past and they could throw things over the fence. So we'd see cigarette butts, we'd see food wrappers, we'd see glass that might be broken in there. So it was important that we carried out a risk assessment on a daily basis. So regardless of where you are, if you've got, say, an outdoor area that is facing the street, or where people can get access to it, so it's good to carry it out. So at that time, we'd make a note of what the problems were, then we'd go out and we'd get everything cleaned up and make sure that there's nothing there that would harm our students. And it's the same thing for you as well. So when you're doing a risk assessment in a centre, then you want to make sure that none of your clients, none of your service users get any harm. So you've figured out what the issues are. So trips, falls, broken tiles, light bulbs needs changing, this chair's got a loose leg, the table is wobbly. So all of these. So now you've got to put down, implement what recommendations you made. So you've got to replace or repair any problematic areas or any equipment. So if the tap won't stop leaking and dripping, and it could drive someone crazy if they're sitting in a quiet room with that drip, drip, drip noise, get someone to come in, get the maintenance staff to come in and try and fix it. Chairs and tables with loose legs, remove them, get them removed until they can be fixed. Carry out staff training. So if you realise, oh, actually, it's not a physical equipment problem, it's a staff training problem. The staff don't know how to handle this piece of equipment properly. They're not wheeling it about, they're not putting the brakes on it whenever they're keeping it stationary. Give them training, just even a 10-minute quick training in the morning before you start work. Say, right, this is this equipment, I've noticed it's not being used properly, this is how we turn it off. Make sure you turn it when you're using it, have it on. When you're not using it, put the wires back, put the brake on, put it onto one side. Don't leave it in the middle of the hall. Tell your staff of any changes. So if you know that something is changing or something's getting repaired or there's a new procedure coming into place, let them know, because it's always better to let them know so they can ask you questions and you can explain how to use it or why it's being done. And then again, implement new policies or procedures. If you've got a new procedure, that a particular way of how you say lift a patient or give them personal care, then implement those. And then if you've got new policies that have come out because of legislation changes, make sure that everybody is aware of those and actually do that in your daily basis. So yeah, just make sure when you're doing, you've got your risk assessment, and just continue, put down, actually figure out what you're going to do and actually do it now. So that's it for 3.3. Any thoughts, Lee?
Recommendations are good because things can always improve. It don't matter how good you think something is, things can always be better, and it's only us that can do that. But when you was talking there, my brain started wondering again, and I thought to myself, like, can we achieve the aim based on the time and effort we put into something, or are we limited to what we can actually do based on the genetics of who we are? So I'm going to look into that.
A deep one,
Yeah.
So in total, what we've looked at, so we looked at the different range of risk assessments. So there's a whole load of different ones, and especially within healthcare, it's not just always figuring out what could cause someone harm physically. It's about things that might cause you stress or mental harm or, a biohazard harm, any of those. Then how would we carry out a risk assessment? We looked at that step by step. And then how, just simple ways you can, put the changes about a risk assessment into place. About this.